And now, stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe, it's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, will my therapist see through my inferiority complex in time for Taco Tuesdays? And is Grandpa reliving his sportsman days, or is Hunter Orange the new hipster color of choice? And now, the podcast host who brushes off poison ivy rashes like King Kong swatting an airplane.
That's right.
Pete Dominic.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. That's Pete Co on the opening and so much more. Thank you, Pete, out in San Francisco. Great guy. And also, he sent today's vitamin N. Get your nature. Get your vitamin N. Take pictures and send them to me and everything else. standupwithpete@gmail.com. That's my email. I am here for you. Yes, I am. That's why I do this podcast each and every day and hope that you will subscribe to it so I can continue to do it. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Seriously, I'm here for you. You're here for me. We are here for each other. We've created an amazing community here on Stand Up. And I just got back from a few days away. I didn't really take a day off the podcast, though. I did shows each day last week and each day this week, but I pre-taped some of them. And the point is, I got away. And guess what? I got rejuvenated. You know, people always say, you take a break, you get rejuvenated, you come back, and it all comes crashing back in your real life. You're not on vacation. Life isn't a vacation. Well, guess what? It worked. I got away for just a couple days. We went up to where our daughters are at camp. Ava's a counselor. Julia was just a camper. And Julia spent 2 weeks there. We picked her up. We brought her back. But Val and I got this one day where we were in Lake George. If you've never been to the Adirondack Mountain Range or Adirondack State Park in upstate New York, you gotta go. Go. Before you die, go to the Adirondack. Sorry to be morbid. But it's a beautiful place, Lake George, and it makes you feel very, very alive. I grew up visiting there in that area with my family, so of course it holds a special place in my heart. And to be able to take my wife there was really special. But most importantly, we've been going there for a few years because of the girls' camp. We rented a boat. We rented like a 60 horsepower little four-seater. And, of course, I have my boat license. When I was 16, we had a little water ski fishing boat growing up on the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. And so, I know what I'm doing, which I think is sexy. To know your way around a boat, come on, let's be honest, it's kind of sexy. I think Val was pretty turned on by this. Point is, we got away for a day. And as soon as we pulled the boat out, it was looking gray and gloomy all morning. As soon as we pulled that boat out, the sun came out, and it shone down on us. Is that a word? Shone? I'm in a good place. I feel really good right now. I wanted to let you know that. It's the dog days of summer, is it? It's the middle of summer here. Lots going on. I'm certainly dealing with several things. So are you. It's inevitable. We live in this two Americas where COVID is on the upsurge again. We've got the climate issue. We've got racism and concerns about democracy. It's a lot, not to mention your own stuff, your own concern about your financial future, about your kids' future, about your relationships, your parents, if you've still got them, your health, the health of someone you care about, even if it's tendinitis in your foot or back pain. You just found a hole in your pool liner. Your ex is driving you crazy. Your car is on its way out, and you need a new one. It's in the shop. It could be anything or everything. It's a lot. And I'm not your therapist, but I can be a conduit and try to be a conduit to the information and other people that can help us along the way on this journey of life together. That's why I'm saying I'm here for you. I'm so honored that you listen to this podcast. If you listen daily, it's such a big deal to me. I don't even know how to tell you how big of a deal it is to me that you press play on this podcast. It's huge. What's even bigger is the community that we are creating along with it. So if you feel the stress and anxiety that the two Americas cause, that all of the stuff in your life is causing, if you're worried or even terrified about what's happening in your country, on our planet, in your community, if you feel isolated, then join us. because that's how a lot of us feel a lot of the time, and we're here for each other. We've got the Discord platform 24/7. We've got our Hangouts on Thursday night, and we've got this great show every day that I'm putting together along with so much of your help and support. So join the stand-up community and be a part of this growing, awesome group of people who share concerns, problems, and solutions, and make some new friends from all across the country while you're at it. Come here to Stand Up with Pete Dominic. We'll sort it out. We get together on Thursday nights. We sort it out. We hang out. We depend on each other. I am so proud to be a part of this amazing group of people. 2 weeks ago, we found out one of our friends, Tanya, is it Arizona? Her son had a staph infection. He was in the hospital. The whole summer is ruined. Their vacation plans ruined. This poor kid and his family. And so a couple of other listeners sent the guy stuff, sent the family like chocolates, Tina and Vicky. They sent gifts to this woman, and it was a game changer for her whole family. Not the chocolates, not that they weren't good. Macadamia, chocolate-covered macadamia nuts from Hawaii and homemade treats from Texas are fantastic. But it was the gesture. It was the gesture that Tanya was so appreciative of. And it made a huge impact in both her son, and her husband. Listen to what Tanya wrote. Pete, the community you created. We received the most unbelievable surprises the last 2 days. Both Vicky and Tina sent gifts to my son. My whole family was blown away and my husband couldn't believe it. Who in today's America would send such thoughtful gifts to a complete stranger? These two wonderful ladies did such an amazing act of kindness. They brightened our day and restored some of our faith in humanity. They also provided a great teaching moment for my son. He was so surprised and shocked by their kindness. We were able to talk about how good it made him feel and how maybe he could be that person in someone else sometimes. This is all possible because of the great community you created. Thank you so much. It means a lot, and I feel honored to be a part of the stand-up family. Tanya, thank you. And I hope that everybody else hears that and feels the same way I felt when I read it. Certainly Tina and Vicky. And I hope that you'll become a member of our community as well. I mean, there's a lot of loneliness right now. I see that with a lot of listeners reaching out to me, and I hear that from them. There's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of, is the whole world gone insane? It can seem that way with how much media you have pounding you day in and day out, social media and everything else, letting you know and signaling that the world has gone crazy. But it hasn't. There are amazing, quote, normal, thoughtful people all over the place. And everybody, I'm just going to go ahead and say everybody that's a member of the stand-up community is one of those people. Maybe you're not the person who's going to send the chocolate. Maybe you're the person who needs the chocolate to be sent. But there's a lot of chocolate makers and chocolate takers. What am I talking about? My point is that getting to know each other all over the country and really all over the world, people are listening to the program, mostly all over the country in Canada, getting to know each other, getting to understand and share each other's struggle with all of the shit. That's what we're doing. And that's what I'm going to continue to do here from the shed, the solar-powered shed in my backyard. I'm going to keep doing this show every day. I'm going to keep talking with you about these issues that we are all dealing with. I'm going to try to understand your vantage point, your point of view, your experience. I'm going to learn from you. That's what I'm going to continue to do. That's what I set out to do, and that's what I think we are doing together. And that is the mission statement part of today's program. Sometimes it seems like reality is slipping away, and I'm here to tell you it's not. Reality lives here. Thank you very much for helping me create it, and thank you very much for being a member of the stand-up community. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing some of you a week from today in Boston at City Winery. Jay Alcovan and I will be there doing the stand-up, doing the comedy, bringing the peoples together, and very much looking forward to Monday, July 26th in Boston. I know several of you folks will be there, and hopefully more of you will be able to join us or tell your friends in the Boston area to come on out. Tickets available, link in the show notes. I've got lots of news to share with you, and I've got Michael Cohen joining me, and I want to do what we do here every day, but I wanted to just deliver that message. I'm in a good place. I want to stay in this good place. I'm feeling a lot of balance right now, and when I haven't, many of you have and have shared that with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. So let's do this show, shall we? It's time for the news, the last 24. And holy smokes, Batman, over the weekend, a lot of crazy things happened. Lots to discuss from the past couple of days. A shooting outside the baseball game in Washington, D.C., Nationals-Padres game suspended the game. You probably heard about that. It was pretty crazy. Wildfires are blazing across western states and floods ravaging Europe, where 180 people have died in Belgium and western Germany as of late Sunday night. A landslide took another 20 souls in Mumbai, India, after monsoon rains caused a landslide there. Dozens of people were arrested over the weekend in Los Angeles following protests over transgender rights. A federal judge ruled DACA unlawful. Also lost one of the most innovative, iconic hip-hop artists and talents of our time. Biz Markie lost his fight to diabetes at age 57. And what I'll argue is an unsung civil rights leader, Gloria Richardson, passed away over the weekend, or rather on Thursday. I think she was 99. I've been reading all about her. I learned embarrassingly about certain people more in their passing than during their time with us. Fascinating woman. I may try to put together a show dedicated to her with some sound and maybe a biographer or family member, because really inspiring woman, as I've been reading so much about her. All right, that and a lot more in today's last 24. Lots to play for you as well from the Sunday shows. Let's start with the latest on the Delta variant. Today's show is brought to you by the Delta variant. Terrifying. I wish we didn't have to do this, but it's time for COVID news. Yeah, it's still out there, and believe it or not, Pete Coe has a jingle for that too.
COVID news.
Okay, well, it's been almost 2 months since the CDC announced these guidelines declaring that fully vaccinated people, those of us who mostly are fully vaccinated, don't need to wear masks in most settings. But now that's starting to make a comeback in California and other places. And now batting cleanup is the highly contagious Delta variant. The Delta variant coronavirus cases now on the rise again across the U.S., especially in states where they're following a cult leader rather than the consensus of everyone in the scientific community, like even geologists, anybody who knows how to read science on this issue of vaccines. They all think it's the best thing since clean drinking water, except for a couple of cranks and conspiracy theorists who, for whatever reason, want to be contrarian. They're grifters. They want to make money. Who knows? But the virus is spreading fast through the MAGA community, where the majority of people remain unvaccinated. I personally feel horrible for those living in that community who have done the right thing, and the healthcare providers that have to treat people who could have prevented their illness by using some of that personal responsibility that these probably same type of folks are constantly using as an excuse for why they don't think people need any kind of, quote, government handouts. Anyway, I'm digressing. With less than half the population fully vaccinated, CDC officials reported that new cases jumped nearly 70%, while hospitals rose nearly 36% and deaths increased 26% over the last weekend. They're calling it the pandemic of the unvaccinated. New infections, have become more pronounced in these parts of the country where vaccination remains low. Okay, so 4 states make up 40% of COVID-19 cases in the past week, with 1 in 5 of those occurring in Florida, where Ron DeSantis, is that his name, said this is all gone. Peter Hotez predicted an upsurge a few weeks ago. Everybody mocked him, and he was right, because he's a scientist studying the science. Meanwhile, cases in southwest Missouri and northern Arkansas have reached levels that haven't been seen since the winter, folks. My friends. Oh, and finally, some 20% of Americans now, we've learned in recent polling, believe in the conspiracy theory that microchips may have been planted inside the COVID-19 vaccines that millions of people have already taken worldwide. A study by YouGov and The Economist that was conducted last week. The poll concluded that over 15% of Americans said this conspiracy theory was, quote, probably true, while another 5% said it was definitely true. So only 5% of Americans definitely think we're being microchipped through the vaccine, and they probably believe the earth is flat as well. So that maybe that's, I don't know, how bad is that? The same poll concluded 27% of people aged 30 to 44 support this theory. 8% of them voted for Joe Biden. 29% of those people are Trump voters that believed it. And some 14% of Democratic voters, 32% of Republican voters also shared the same sentiment. So if you know someone who believes in this theory, I'm desperate to interview that person. I will protect their name and identity. So let them tell them to contact me. I'd really be interested in having a thoughtful Q&A with those people to try to understand where they're coming from. That's right. I want to try to understand where those who think we are being microchipped are coming from. And a couple more stories in COVID news. Now, 2 athletes have tested positive for COVID-19 in the Olympic Village in Japan. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about the Olympics in Japan, and already skeptical of hosting a spectatorless games and whether or not going through the event was the right call. Also, 3 of the Democrats who ran from Texas to prevent passing legislation suppressing the votes of minorities and others now have also tested for COVID-19. Apparently, they have no or mild symptoms. They're all vaccinated. And Joe Biden called out Facebook for vaccine misinformation. So I think that's where I'll start with the audio. That's your COVID news that I've gathered over the past couple of days, but now here is the sound. Let's start with CBS News' John Dickerson on Face the Nation, who had this to first ask Scott Gottlieb, former FDA commissioner.
So the CDC director said this week that that there is an epidemic of the unvaccinated. What's your reaction to that?
Well, look, when you look at the people who've been hospitalized, 97% of the hospitalizations are in people who are unvaccinated. Most of the deaths that are occurring right now are in people who are unvaccinated. The bottom line is that many people are no longer susceptible to COVID. More than 50%, about 50% of the population has been fully vaccinated. Probably another third of the American population has been previously infected with this virus. So many people aren't susceptible to the virus. But if 25% of the population remains susceptible to the virus, in absolute terms, that's still a lot of people. And this virus is so contagious, this variant is so contagious that it's going to infect the majority of them. Most people will either get vaccinated or have been previously infected, or they will get this Delta variant. And for most people who get this Delta variant, it's going to be the most serious virus that they get in their lifetime in terms of the risk of putting them in the hospital.
There you go. You hear it? You hear it, Dr. Scott Gottlieb? Good analysis right there. And now let's get to the root of the problem, why people aren't getting vaccinated. It's a disinformation campaign led by folks on the right, specifically members of the media. And I thought Dana Bash did a good job grabbing a couple of those clips and then presenting it to the current Surgeon General and Ezra Klein lookalike, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who joined her on CNN's State of the Union this weekend. Here's this 2 minutes, which I think is helpful to hear, as much as it is maddening to have to hear Laura Ingraham, or however the freak her name is pronounced.
And I want our viewers to have an idea of disinformation being spread on the right. Take a listen.
There's nothing more anti-democratic, anti-freedom than pushing an experimental drug on Americans against their will.
The idea that you would force people to take medicine they don't want or need, is there a precedent for that in our lifetime?
I feel like a vaccination in a weird way is just generally kind of going against nature.
I wonder if that person has ever flown in an airplane or a car or taken an Advil. But besides that, President Biden did accuse social media platforms of killing people. Do you think conservative media, like Fox News, are doing the same? Are they killing people, too, with rhetoric like you just heard?
Well, then I think all of us, including the media, including individuals, health professionals, have a responsibility to share the truth about health as science dictates, as science informs us. And, unless we do that, unless we are honest about the consequences of our communication with people, unless we are rigorous about ensuring that what we communicate is actually sourced from science and not from opinion on critical issues like the vaccine, then we are going to ultimately put people at risk. And that is my great worry, Dana. There are people all across our country, and I hear from folks all the time, who are struggling to make decisions about their health. After this very difficult year we've been through, people deserve to have access to accurate information. They deserve to hear that from their leaders. They deserve to hear that from the media. They deserve to see that on platforms online. And that they need that information to be able to make decisions to protect themselves and their families. That's the least we can do for them. And my worry is that all this is misinformation that's floating around. It's having a real cost that can be measured in lives lost, and that is just tragic.
Indeed, it is. Speaking of tragedy, let's head on over to Fox News to listen to a guy who definitely turned very rightward and very Trump-friendly. I used to know him at CNN. Howie Kurtz was on Fox News, and he had this asshole, Corey Lewandowski, on. The reason I play it is, well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and I've got things to add. Here it is. This is the problem, not the solution.
But the media never really gave him full credit for creating and carrying out Operation Warp Speed. Having said that, why doesn't he sort of help complete this achievement by pushing more forcefully for many unvaccinated Americans, many of whom support him, to go out and get the shots?
Look, the president has taken the shot himself. He leads by example. I don't know what more he can do. It's not exactly like the Biden administration is asking the president to come out and sit down at the White House. And even if he did, I don't know if President Trump would do that.
He could do it on his own. He doesn't need to wait for Joe Biden's invitation.
But Howie, he's led by example. He got the shots. He's been inoculated. He's told people to do it. Look, all you can do is go and have a conversation with people. If people don't want to get a shot, this is still America, and they can do that.
I've got just a few seconds. President Biden said Friday that Facebook is killing people by allowing vaccine misinformation to spread on its platform. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. Look, we have to rein in Facebook and all these social media giants who are deciding what is and is not proper content. But that is absolute hyperbole. The truth is, people know what the value of the vaccine is, and they should be encouraged to do it. But if you choose not to get a vaccine, Howie, you do so with the decision of you and your doctor and your healthcare professionals. That's how we have to leave it. And this notion that Joe Biden is going to send people door to door to check on your vaccine status is absolutely outrageous and antithetical to being an American.
Yeah. Well, I agree that it's an individual decision. I also wish more Americans would get these life-saving shots. Corey Lewandowski.
Oh, I'm sorry I did that to you. I sullied your day, your morning, having to hear that creep, that awful Corey Lewandowski. But it's important. I think it's important to hear what they're saying. It's also important, to my point later when with my conversation with Michael Cohen. Donald Trump is the cult master. He is leading the denial on this vaccine. And yes, he's admitted that he got it, but he always whispers those kinds of things. He could go do so much more right now. He doesn't need Joe Biden. He doesn't need anybody. He could make a PSA. He could tell everybody to get vaccinated. He could do all kinds of stuff and take credit for the vaccine if he wanted and lose less of his supporters who are dying as a result of it. But he's not. He's not doing it because it's divisive, and he's worried that he doesn't want to go against what these people he's already led them to believe. All right, a quick clip out of context. This is the great Tiffany Cross on Velshi over the weekend, and I just wanted to sneak this in here without much of a segue. It's pretty self-explanatory.
I mean, how ridiculous was it that we saw this Blue Lives Matter crowd attacking police officers? How ridiculous is it that, you know, the right, conservative right wants to talk about, you know, how defund the police is so radical. They're defunding the police right now on Capitol Hill, and as our friend Joy Reid says, they won't even defend the police in this instance. So these are very dangerous times. And honestly, Ali, I mean, it's hard for me to dismiss it because we're seeing this take place not only in violence, but in violent policy. As we narrow the path to the ballot box, it's not just about voting rights, but this is how you take a person's liberty. You limit their participation in democracy, and then you continuously impose draconian policies that will have an adverse impact on all of Americans, but most certainly a targeted impact on people of color, the rising majority of this country. And that, my friend, as you know, is what this is about. The changing demographic and a dinosaur who refuses to become extinct and fear of losing power. And as long as people of color expand territory, as long as we're fighting for equality and fighting to be on equal footing, I fear that we might see Donald Trump leave and disappear, but we will not see an end to Trumpism.
I'm going to take the unpopular contrarian view that is less the case. He has lost so much influence and power, it's hard to prove a negative. But since he's been deplatformed off of Twitter, Facebook, etc., YouTube, you name it. And yeah, if Donald Trump hypothetically just died, I think it would make a huge difference. As long as he is there, he's going to be screaming and perpetuating these lies and rumors. And I'm sorry, I don't think anybody else has the kind of influence over people's minds that he does. That's what I'm saying. As long as Donald Trump has a voice, it is going to matter. And I'm not obviously even remotely talking about anybody doing anything violent to anyone else ever. But that is the truth. The guy is an influential leader. And I think the movement of Trumpism doesn't move as fast and as rapidly without him. That's my thought. I'd love to hear yours. Okay, so also want to just play this for you. Back to Face the Nation, CBS. John Dickerson had economist Jill Schlesinger on the show. She explained the economics underlying price increases that you're probably noticing at the gas pump, the grocery store, and other places.
So prices are up 5%. That's the biggest rise in 13 years since August of 2008. What's going on?
Well, there's a lot of different forces, and I just want to point out that a lot of this has to do with the fact that a year ago, when we have these price increases, we look back a year, that's when the economy was still mostly shut down. So the effect of looking 1 year ago is that it seems like this gigantic big jump in prices. But we also have the confluence of good old Econ 101, supply and demand. So obviously, we've been shut down mostly for 16 months. Red hot consumer demand. There's more than $2 trillion of excess savings that we have burning a hole in our pockets, and we're spending it big time. And then on the supply side, we've had a lot of bottlenecks in supply in certain areas, and that has really cut off a lot of supply. So you put it all together, and as you said, a big price increase. Even when we take out volatile food and energy, we have the biggest price increases in 30 years.
All right, lots more to talk about with that, but I did want to play that soundbite for you from Jill Schlesinger, I just can't say it, on CBS News. Okay, and now let's get to just a couple crazy people clips, and mainly because there's a jingle for that, too. It's time for Crazy Time.
Now it's crazy time.
All right, so, yeah, we could use that from time to time. And by crazy, I mean people know exactly what they're doing, and they're evil. How about that? Yeah, I'm talking about the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Matt Gaetzes of the world, who thought that the third time might be a charm for finding a venue in California that would host their Crazy Time White Supremacist America First rally. But instead, they got kicked out of every venue that they tried to go to. And then at one point, they were just standing on the beach where this guy caught up with them and messed with them and did like a photo op, and they thought he was a fan because he's all decked out in the American flag. And then he just called them anti-Semites and pedophiles and was taken away by security. You got to see it, but here it is.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I mean, everyone thinks you're crazy. I don't think you're crazy. People think you're a pedophile. I don't think you're a pedophile at all. I don't think he's a pedophile at all. The charges against him are totally false. They're totally false. Oh my God.
Oh, so funny. That was so great. I love that. And I don't know, it resonates. It goes viral, stuff like that. And if someone did that to a politician I liked, I'm sure it would go viral too. It is probably, it's not a healthy democracy. It's not the greatest way, I think, to get your opinion heard. But something about that was satisfying to me. Maybe I'm becoming what I'm disgusted with. But moving on, speaking of disgusting, here's Caitlyn Jenner and Jeanine Pirro in the Crazy Time, Fun Time segment.
Should Donald Trump run in 2024?
That's his decision.
Would you support him if he did?
If I was governor of the state of California, I would, obviously, I would support him.
So Caitlyn Jenner clearly not ready for that or any question in this interview, or prime time for that matter. She's running for governor of California. She doesn't know what answer she's supposed to give to get votes from Californians. But it's not, I would support Trump if he ran again. But she doubles down.
What if you weren't governor? Would you still support him?
Yes, I still would support him. I do not like what's happening in this country right now.
And specifically, I mean black people demanding voting rights. It really upsets me. And other things.
We always try to put everybody in a box. Like, you're white, you're black, you're a Republican, you're a Democrat. If you're a Republican, you have to think this way. You must think this and that. You know, Republican ideas.
Like vaccines are the devil and microchipped and democracy is not healthy or good. We want an authoritarian and tax cuts trickle down to the rest of us and climate change isn't real.
And that's not me, okay? I'm an inclusive Republican because I have conservative economic values.
And by that, I mean there should not be taxes upon wealthy people who are reality show stars. And also, I don't like regulations that tell you can't pour chemicals into drinking water and burn anything you want into the atmosphere. Those regulations are killing us.
I mean, if you have less taxes, less regulation, and a pro-business environment.
I hate that pro-business. What does it even mean? What is the opposite of pro-business? Pro-public interest? Pro-healthy lungs? Not having buildings collapsing on top of you? What does pro-business mean? It means giving businesses whatever they want to make as much money as they want without any impediments that would keep us safe and healthy and happy and give us access to opportunity. That's what it sounds like to me. And then all the rest of this bullshit that she makes up.
It works. It works every time throughout history. Ronald Reagan, it worked.
Right. For rich people.
For the first 3 years, rocked it. I mean, was working, even after all he was going through.
Yeah, for 4 years, I think.
It always works. And so, but on the social side, I'm not like a lot of Republicans. I'm an inclusive Republican.
I'm a trans woman. Say that. That's what you are. Be proud. Be a role model. I'm a trans woman and they hate you.
I'm in it for the people. I'm inclusive to all. I think the number one thing that the Republican Party needs to do is change the image, because the Democrats have taken hostage this question for years, and we need to change the image of what the Republican Party is. We're inclusive to all people.
No, you can't change the image. You can't do it. It's too late. Maybe it's too late for anybody to change their branding and their image, but you're not inclusive to all people. You're literally trying to make it harder for, frankly, even your own voters to vote. You're not inclusive to all people. You're inclusive mostly to wealthy, affluent, white, Christian people. That's it. You can't get outside that box very far anymore, is my belief. All right, I'm done ranting and raving, and that is the crazy time portion of the news. All right, I got to get this baby up. I'm doing it on Monday morning. Usually I do this late at night, but I want to post it for you. So let's skip the rest that I had and get right over to rapid fire headlines here. It's time for the news dump, written by Jason Moe, recorded by Pete Coe. Oh, it's a Moe and Coe joint.
Tired of the COVID and some assholes named Trump. Just stand up with Pete on today's news dump.
All right. All right. That was some good branding. I like that, even though I did do a lot of COVID and some Trump stuff there. So sorry about that, boys. Let's get to the headlines, rapid fire style, everybody. Everything else you got to know here on the news dump. All right. Let's see. Where should we start? How about a marijuana legalization story? It's a good place to start. Pew Research Center polls 91% of U.S. adults favor legalizing cannabis. How about that statistic? And ending the federal marijuana prohibition will mean a tremendous amount for the industry. And for the first time in history, some Senate Democrats now introduced a bill to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, remove cannabis from the federal list of controlled substances, laws that led to more than 1.5 million arrests in 2019 alone. And so pay attention to that story and federal laws and how this moves through the United States Senate. That is a huge deal right there. The new real estate normal, folks, is pretty interesting to see what's happening with prices in real estate. Real estate values have surged by 25% since the pandemic began. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We should get some real estate agents. Rob Dog, you're out there. Who else? wants to do a real estate agent show because it's different in different markets. That could be interesting. If you're a real estate agent, send me an email and write real estate agent in the subject. The Department of Justice, by the way, speaking of which, probing sky-high agent commission fees in a related story. John McAfee, the guy who was the billionaire tech pioneer worth more than $100 million, claimed to be broke when he died behind bars. Still a lot of suspicion about how he died. It was supposedly a suicide, but apparently blew $100 million on bizarre mansions, according to an author who collaborated with him. I just thought that was an interesting one to throw in there. The Biden administration has transferred its first detainee from Guantanamo Bay. The transfer comes after President Biden quietly began efforts to close the detention facility at the Enclave in the southeast coast of Cuba. And speaking of Joe Biden, he's expected to field questions about the pandemic and other issues during the CNN town hall broadcast from Cincinnati this week on Wednesday. Also, First Lady Jill Biden scheduled to represent the United States on Friday in Japan. What's she going to stand there alone in the stands and wave? Only 20% of Japanese population has been vaccinated against COVID-19 as the Olympics get underway. What else did I want to tell you? Oh, the weekend box office. Black Widow, which I watched with Ava on the one of two nights I got to see her. And we thought it was pretty good. It got panned by the critics, but we like anything Marvel does. Anyway, it ceded the number one spot to, guess what? LeBron James and Bugs Bunny. Yeah, the Warner Brothers Space Jam, A New Legacy, apparently defied expectations and won the box office this weekend. I saw this and wanted to mention it. It was interesting. New York Times columnist, two-time Pulitzer Prize winner, Nicholas Kristof may run. He's exploring a run for governor of Oregon. 62 years old, exploring a 2022 run for governor. That'll be interesting to follow and watch. And finally, a story for just to report, just so I can get a news dump jingle on it. This is just to troll Pete Coe. An Atlanta woman in Atlanta woke up and found an exotic cat native to Africa in her bed. That wasn't her cat. I mean, finding any other animal that isn't yours in your bed has got to be pretty wild, but an exotic cat, looks like a little leopard. She woke up and there it was. And I think that Pete Coe should write about that. All right, that is today's news dump brought to you by VeriHeal. Go to veriheal.com/Pete and get your medical marijuana card right now and save the money on the taxes and all the hassle. veriheal.com/Pete. I'll give that a more robust read, but I appreciate their sponsorship. A bunch of new sponsors for the show that I'm going to introduce each day this week as well. Hopefully that's cool with you. If you're a paid subscriber, you got a problem with that, you just let me know. A little something special for you if you got a real issue with that. But I'm investing a lot in the show. I'm very excited to have a bunch of new sponsors for this month. But if you got an issue with it, about any of it, email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Okay. Joining me right now is a columnist and commentator who I have a great deal of respect for. Really smart guy who I love talking to. I love reading him. I'm now subscribing to his newsletter, and you can too. You can get a discount if you want a paid subscription. Go to truthandcons.substack.com. truthandcons.substack.com to subscribe to Michael Cohen's newsletter. And he's the author of American Maelstrom, the 1968 election and politics of division, as well as several other articles and another book, Clear and Present Safety, The World Has Never Been Better, and Why That Matters to Americans. He wrote that with Mika Zenko. He's written dozens of news outlets, including as a columnist for The Guardian, Foreign Policy magazine. He's also a speechwriter at one point early in his career at the U.S. State Department. He's been a lecturer at Columbia University. Really smart guy. Great to get him on the phone. And here he is at SpeechBoy71 on Twitter, at SpeechBoy71. Michael Cohen, everybody. Well, here he is. I've just told you about his newsletter. I've just been reading his newsletter and reading his latest tweets. I'm very happy whenever he's able to join me. The great Michael Cohen. Hi, sir. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining me.
Pete, it is always a pleasure to be here.
All right, so I have a million questions for you about thoughts on things and so on and so forth. But first, you wrote a piece for MSNBC, then you wrote around it for your newsletter and added more context about the polarization when it comes to vaccination rates in the United States of America
And I just keep thinking about this, and I want to just keep getting different takes on this. You wrote an interesting piece looking at the data. How come this is happening? How is it? It's right down to the county, I feel like.
It is. It's basically, I used an example in the piece that I found really kind of remarkable that, Missouri has one of the highest increases in COVID hospitalizations and COVID rates and COVID deaths. And it also has one of the lower vaccination rates in the country. And it's a red state, of course, that voted for Donald Trump. And as we've seen so far, the states there's almost a perfect correlation between states that voted for Joe Biden and have 70% of their citizens vaccinated and states that voted for Donald Trump and don't. But in Missouri, it's even by county. So literally, Joe Biden won 3 counties in Missouri in 2020. 2 of them, St. Louis County and Boone County, have the 2 highest vaccination rates in the state. So if you live in a county that Joe Biden won, there's a really good chance you're surrounded by people who are vaccinated. If you live in a county that Donald Trump won, you're not. And it's killing people, literally, as we speak.
And I know that you're not a doctor or an epidemiologist, but you read a lot of this stuff. And I just wonder what you think about the attitudes, because you do write around the cultural part of this. You've written a lot and said a lot about masks and vaccines, and you never, you're pretty fearless in giving your take on it. But what do you think it means? Because some people are simply going, you know what? Fine, don't get vaccinated if you don't want to get vaccinated. I live in my community. We're vaccinated. You guys are going to keep dying. And my immediate reaction all the time there is thinking about folks who work in hospitals. Like, come on, like cut them some slack.
Yes, obviously, and cut the slack to the people who, for whatever reason, can't get vaccinated or who are compromised. But I do hear this attitude sometimes on the left of people who say, well, if they die, that's their problem. Mm-hmm. And I find that to be kind of appalling, because I really do think, I truly believe every life is precious. And a lot of these people have been misinformed by political leaders and by media elites. I'm going to call out people like Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, who literally have blood on their hands because they are promoting vaccine misinformation. So I think, this is a very sad example of how polarization is slowly destroying the country. But I also think, and this is where I'm going to be a little bit tougher on this, I think we just have reached a point where we need to seriously consider, having vaccine mandates, which says to people, you want to go to a concert, you want to go to a baseball game, you want to go to the movies, you want to go back to work, you have to be vaccinated. Right. And if you don't, then you're going to not get those things. And I'm going to use an analogy here that something happened with my kids yesterday, actually, or Friday. I was going to go out. I had to go and pick up dinner. We were in on Friday night, and I said, "Get all my kids, get your shoes on. We're going to go and we'll pick up a dessert treat." And my oldest daughter said, "I don't want to do that. I don't want to go." I said, "Okay, you don't want to go? Fine. You don't get dessert." And she said, "Fine." So she made a choice. She said, "I'm not going to go with you." So she didn't get dessert, and my youngest child got dessert. And I think that's exactly the approach that we should use with people who won't vaccinate. You don't want to vaccinate? Fine. That's your choice. You want to put people at risk? That's your choice. But here's what you're going to lose. Here's the consequence for doing that. Because up to this point, we have let it slide. We've let people get away with not vaccinating, and we said we have to respect them. We don't have to respect them. Okay? They have to respect the fact that they're putting up themselves, others at risk. And the only way to deal with this is to take something away from them. And maybe that is what needs to happen so people will actually get vaccinated. Because this situation in which people refuse to do it and say, oh, it's my personal freedom, my personal choice, doesn't fly. It doesn't fly because you're putting others at risk, you're putting the healthcare system at risk, and you're perpetuating this pandemic that most of us who've gotten vaccinated would like to move beyond.
Well, I think public health officials could learn from your parenting, and the carrot and stick thing is interesting, because I think a lot of the people that aren't getting vaccinated, if you looked at a Venn diagram there, you'd see they also love dessert by the looks of them.
No comment on that. But
and if you don't get vaccinated, you don't get dessert, is what I'm trying to say. Mandates are a thing that we wish we didn't have to do, but if you're not going to voluntarily do it, then there has to be, at some point, something has to happen. But let me right. You go ahead.
No, I will say one thing. I saw this piece in National Review, which is a conservative, magazine based, saying, you're not going to get anti-vaxxers to jump on board if you disrespect them. And my argument would be, we've respected them too much.
That was a big piece. I saw a lot of people tweeting about that yesterday. National Review. Go ahead. Sorry, we've given.
No, but it's we've given them the respect of somehow taking their views as being credible, and they're not. Those views are harming themselves, harming their communities, harming people around them, and harming all of us who would like to, as I said, move on from the pandemic. I mean, if I lived in LA County right now, and I had to wear a mask because people around me are not vaccinating, I would be furious. And, I wore a mask for a year and a half, so I wouldn't have to wear a mask anymore. And that's what I'd like to do now. So I just want to say, I think we've reached a point now where, it's enough I'm tired of having you have to respect people who aren't vaccinated. Enough. They need to respect people who are getting vaccinated.
President, you said earlier, Fox News has blood on their hands. And President Biden said the same thing about Fox News. He flippantly said
Facebook.
About Facebook. Forgive me. He said Facebook is killing people. Said social media platforms like Facebook are killing people. He didn't quite say. He said, "What would you say to them?" Right? I think the quote is. He said they're killing people. What do you think about that? Because that's also being a lot of people are debating whether or not that's accurate or fair for the president to say.
It's not the language probably I would have used. I guess in the sense that I don't know that. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I just said a second ago that Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson have blood in their hands. I mean, I guess the difference I'd say is that those are people who are making the purposeful choice to spread misinformation when I would bet $1 million that both of them are vaccinated. And they're doing it for political reasons. I think Facebook, I don't understand why Facebook refuses to correct on misinformation. I think they need to do a better job of it. And I think that allowing it to spread on their site is a public menace. So, look, I think Biden's anger is appropriate, frankly.
I want to ask you to try something else on, because I just was thinking about this. I was talking to my wife about it. As you know, I was telling you I drove like 3 hours, listened to podcasts, and so often I talk to very smart people every day, and so often people say, Trump. Trump is just the end of it. Trump was, it was all these horrible things were happening, and before Donald Trump, people give too much credit to Donald Trump, and I'm not articulating it very well, but you know what I mean. And my point is, you know what? Wait a second. This one person actually is at fault for a tremendous amount, specifically of people not getting vaccinated, and even worse, telling a lie. Like, nobody else telling my wife this. I was trying to make this argument, and I want to see what you think. Like, the fact that he said the election was going to be rigged before it happened, said it was rigged, said he won, and continues to say it over and over and over, that's one person doing that. And everybody else wouldn't be doing it if he wasn't leading that charge. And the same thing with the vaccination. Yeah, he got vaccinated. If he were out front right now saying, go get vaccinated, that's one person that could change two huge games, and I'm going to blame most of it on him right now. That's my big new idea.
I think that's fair, although I guess the way I feel about this a little bit is that Republicans in particular, have agency, right? They have the ability, to say to their supporters that the former president is lying. Right. They had the power to impeach him and ensure he never runs again for president by convicting him.
Good point.
So I think that a lot of blame belongs on Trump. But on the vaccine thing, yes, he could go out and speak more forcefully about people's need people to get vaccinated. I don't know what difference it would make. I think it makes some difference. But, there are people who are actively telling lies about the vaccine. I saw Tucker Carlson, who is just, a menace to society.
Yes.
Had Alex Berenson on, who has spent much of the last year and a half, also a menace to society, spreading one lie after another about COVID. First lying about saying it wasn't a big deal, and now lying about the vaccines. So
also,
I do
before
think
that, a lot of people don't know that he did this whole number on marijuana. He was so anti-marijuana for a long time as well, and he got a lot of bad publicity for the pseudoscience on that as well. Go ahead about him though.
Yeah, but he's probably made a fortune off of this vaccine trial, but it is appalling. But I was struck by something happened a couple days ago that someone asked Mitch McConnell about vaccines, and he said, "Look, I have said from the beginning people should get vaccinated," and he has, to his credit. And then someone said, well, what about the people in your caucus, like Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, who continue to spread lies? And McConnell said, well, I'm not going to get into that. I mean, Mr. Profile and Courage here, Mitch McConnell, who, he should, if he had even an atom of political altruism, altruism in general, would say, Ron Johnson shouldn't be saying that because the reality is the vaccines are safe and they're going to save your life. And I think, these guys are making a choice. They're making a choice, not to condemn the anti-vaxxers in their midst, to not, I think, be more vocal about the need to vaccinate. And certainly on the election stuff, I mean, every single one of them is basically pushing this lie. So even for Mitch McConnell, who again, to his credit, acknowledged that the president was lying, he still wouldn't vote to impeach the guy. So, at the end of the day, I think that they all have to be held responsible. I mean, Trump is obviously, a big part of the problem, but all of them have made this choice to link themselves to Trump and to link their political fortune to Trump. And for that, they should, they can't live that down.
Right. They can't live it down. But I'm like, if not for him saying these crazy things, he's a cult leader. They can't go. They can't go against him, or they lose their seat in power. They get primaried by a crazy person. And I'm not saying they shouldn't go against him. I'm saying that is the truth. And he, as the cult leader, is saying that not being outspoken on getting on a vaccine that he should take credit for. I mean, I wouldn't give credit for him, but if he's smart, he would. And obviously the big lie. I mean,
yes, of course. And look,
nobody else could do that. Nobody else could do that. There's not another person, I argue, that could do that.
Probably not. I think that's probably right. I mean, I think at the same time, if Mitch McConnell had said we need to join together and we need to impeach and convict Trump, I think a lot of Republicans would have followed him enough to actually make that happen.
That's a good point.
But he didn't have the guts to do it.
Yeah.
I think I was talking to somebody the other day, and I, made this comment that I think in a weird way that this the Republican Party has become more extreme since Trump left office than they were before. And I to me, that's sort of clear and obvious. That's what's happening. I mean, the party has adopted, on its own volition, this argument that 2020 election was stolen. They have promoted these efforts to suppress the vote in places where, there's significant African American populations. They have, many of them have proudly said they're not vaccinating, have pushed vaccine misinformation, have portrayed, not getting vaccinated as somehow a personal choice. I mean, again, it's just not a person. I mean, I keep hearing this. I heard Kristi Noem the other day, Kristi Noem is like
governor of
Lady Macbeth, with governor of North Dakota, Lady Macbeth without the conscience. She basically, she gave the speech at CPAC in which she bashed other Republican governors for imposing mass mandates because she didn't do it in North Dakota. Meanwhile, North Dakota has the third highest death rate from COVID in the country. And she's attacking people like DeSantis and Abbott in Texas because even though they each did a half-assed job on COVID, they did at one point or another impose mass mandates, and that is, verboten. She literally has blood in her hands, literally. I mean, and her policies cost people's lives in North Dakota. And now she's bashing people for actually trying to protect lives. And she's a front runner for potentially for the GOP nomination in 2024. God help us.
The crueler, the better.
The crueler, the better. And look, I got to say one thing. I know this sounds like I'm being partisan against Republicans, and I do want to be clear. Like, this isn't a partisan argument, right? This is just common sense. This is just facts.
Yes, but it's a cult. You can't use the word. There's a cult. It's not partisanship. There are conservatives and liberals and Democrats and Republicans that think for themselves and criticize all different kinds of things. But this is just like a cult.
Like Liz Cheney, I don't agree with Liz Cheney on anything.
Terrible.
God love her. But look what she has done. What she has done against Trump on this is to her credit, and I give her all the credit.
And she's going to get run out of Wyoming on a rail.
She's going to get run out of office. Exactly. And I think she is. And I wouldn't mind. I don't have any affection for the Cheney family. But what she's done is basically she said, I'm not going to lie like the rest of you are going to do. And by the way, they all know they're lying.
Dude, do you know? Did you hear who they're running and he's winning right now in polls against her primary?
Oh, it's the guy who statutory rape guy.
It might be. I didn't see that one. I saw it's the current foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov. He is he is polling better. He's currently working directly for Putin, but he put his name in the ring in Wyoming, and he's.
See, that's funny. That's very funny.
That was Sergei Lavrov.
Congressman Lavrov from Laramie.
Where is he based out of? Moscow. Has he ever been to Wyoming? Nope. But they like him more than Liz Cheney. Give it a rest, Mark Milley is the title of your, I think, your latest issue of your newsletter, which everybody should subscribe to. truthandcons.substack.com. This is not something I saw many other people doing. Everybody was pretty much cheering for Mark Milley's courage. He's the chief, current and former Joint Chiefs of Staff, both Trump.
No, current. Yeah, right.
He was under Trump. He's still
chief.
there under Biden. Right?
Yes.
And we all saw him being testifying, saying that we should teach history in the military and about race and so on. But so basically, new reporting coming out about his role in trying to stop a coup, and you don't like the kind of credit he's being given. How do you? Everybody should read this whole piece, but give us a
Mark Milley, basically, from what I can tell, did nothing. He basically made clear he wasn't going to carry an illegal order by the president. Great. That's what you're supposed to do. That's as Chris Rock would say, that's what you're supposed to do. Right? You don't get credit for that.
Right.
And then he literally, turns around and basically leaks all this stuff to these Washington Post supporters who gullibly basically push it out there as if Mark Milley is the savior of democracy in America, when in reality, it's hard to see what he did. And I was struck by something else that I haven't seen commented on. He in the piece says, I'm going to keep the Nazis out of Washington, and let's just and he said these people who fought in World War II, I'm going to keep them out of Washington. And so first of all, he gets an F for historical analogies on that one, just for the record, because the people who from the Capitol, they're not Nazis who fought against World War II. They might be bad people. They're not the Nazis who fought against World War II.
You don't like the equivocation between the same Nazi party of
it's
them.
Just it's a stupid analogy. It doesn't really make sense.
All right.
But what struck me is well, why weren't you prepared when the actual January 6th rally happened? Right. Maybe that wasn't your responsibility, your job, but it feels like if you want credit for this and you saw this coming, then I don't know where was the lack of preparation seems kind of striking.
It's interesting because that just made me think of Richard Clarke pre 9/11, and he was a high-ranking guy in counterterrorism. He was screaming. He wasn't the highest guy, but he was screaming. And then he wrote a book saying, "Hey, listen, I did my thing," and then still took responsibility for it happening. But that's like I agreed with that. Like, where were the people that were warning? And Mark Milley should have been warning if he was reading the same intelligence that anybody had access to. If you had an internet connection and we're reading QAnon, you would have seen this was a huge plan. And I think you make a great point about him not being ready for, and anybody not being ready for 1/6. They should all be fired because they're not going to be ready for the next one if they're not watching these conspiracy theories.
He's bragging about having D.C. shut down after January 6th, which is like great. The barn burned down, the horse escaped, but at least you got everything.
Oh, great!
Now.
Yeah, that's like closing 14th Street after 9/11.
Yeah, right. What struck me the most about it also is that if you want to see who is responsible for protecting democracy, it's all those secretaries of state around the country who refused to go along with Trump. And a lot of them were Republicans, by the way. Brad Raffensperger in Georgia. I hate to give credit to Brian Kemp for anything, but Brian Kemp refused to go along as governor of Georgia. All of the judges who basically threw Trump's, ridiculous arguments out of court. You give credit to all the folks at the Department of Justice who refused, and we've seen articles about this, who refused to go along with Trump's request to file lawsuits on his behalf. The person who replaced Barr, his name I think it was Rosen. I can't remember exactly his name. He basically said, "I'm not going to do this." But people at DOJ said, "We're not going to do this." And actually, Mike Pence, who, again, did his job, did what he was supposed to do. He certified the election, but at some personal and political cost to himself. What did Mark Milley do? And Milley said, and what I see happening here is Milley screwed up last summer. He shows up in D.C. remember the infamous moment when they cleared those protests around Lafayette Square and Trump walks across the street? Who's behind him in battle fatigues? Mark Milley, which he never should have done, which was a huge mistake, which was a huge violation of civil military relations. It basically, he's in the middle of a political photo op. And, he apologized for it at the time, but this is his effort to clean up his reputation. And I'll just say for the record, it's kind of insane that the reporters of the Washington Post don't see through this, because that's what he's doing. He's leaking to them how strongly he's up against Trump in order to burst his reputation. Right. And I'll tell you something else that sort of annoys me. He at one point, there's an anecdote in the book or in the excerpt that he went to Mark Meadows and said, "I heard you're going to be firing Chris Wray at the FBI and Gina Haspel at CIA." Mm-hmm. And, I'm watching. And he apparently intended as a warning to Meadows. where in God's name does the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff get the balls to tell the White House Chief of Staff about, I'm watching you on personnel decisions? That's completely out of his lane, something he shouldn't be involved with at all. And that's a complete violation of I should say a violation of civil-military relations, of him stepping way over the line of what is appropriate for him to do. He should not be doing that. And he's using that as a way to say, look how tough I was. Well, no, actually, what you did was something that we don't want to see in this country, which is the military weighing in on matters that don't involve the military and not, subsuming themselves to the civilian leadership, which is what someone like Mark Milley has to do. So I just felt, that everything about those excerpts just kind of appalled me. And it appalled me that Milley thinks that somehow this makes him look good. To me, it makes him look like somebody who's trying to steal somebody else's valor.
Wow.
I'll just say one other thing too. I mean, this is sort of a criticism. I think Phil Rucker and
I'm supposed to be talking to him this week.
Well, look, I forget this co-author's name.
Carol Leinig. Yeah.
Leinig, yeah. And, first of all, I thought on Milley, they gave him a lot more credit than he deserves. But there was this excerpt, a couple days ago in the Post in which there are all these quotes about how Ivanka Trump didn't like the January 6th thing and thought it was wrong. And, of course, we know who leaked that to Phil and Carol. It's Ivanka Trump. And I'm just like, why are you carrying water for her now as well? A lot of these books, what they do is the people who look good in the books are the people who actually talk to the reporters. All of Bob Woodward's books, you can tell who talked to him by who looks good and who could tell the story that made them look good. And it just struck me that what's happening here is you got all these Trump sycophants and Trump enablers who are now trying to, make themselves look good in the history books by saying, I tried to stop this, or I was bothered at the time. The hell with that. To hell with that. To hell with Mark Milley making this. Mark Milley should keep his fucking mouth shut. Sorry, but he shouldn't be talking to reporters and should be bragging about how we try to protect democracy. Sorry, I apologize for getting a little bit upset there.
No, I love it. I love it.
It's ridiculous.
Let me just ask you one last issue I want to get your take on, which is the fragility of our remaining democracy. And you already touched on the voter suppression.
In the last 90 seconds. Well,
yeah. Well, I mean, specifically the Texas Democrats just to take off so there can be no legislation passed, and it's eventually going to pass. But the idea was to bring attention to the issue and to put pressure on, I guess, specifically two Senate Democrats, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. I'm not sure who else they're covering for in terms of not voting for these two bills that would protect the vote, access to the ballot. And so I wonder what you think of this move and what you think of the entire issue right now with where we're at, because it seems like Joe Manchin might be able to, the Democrats might be able to get these infrastructure bills passed. It's possible. It's still, who knows? But on the issue of voting, I just don't see it. And it's crazy because he has had to meet with all these civil rights leaders. And then he went to Texas to raise money from Republicans at the same time that Democrats went to Washington. It seems kind of
ominous. Here's the thing. I saw some quote from Manchin a couple of days ago where he said he still is confident that he can get Republicans to support a voting rights bill. And, I wrote the piece a few months ago. I just don't think Joe Manchin's that stupid. I really don't. I mean, I don't think he's necessarily like the a Mensa graduate, but I don't think he's an idiot either. And clearly he knows that's not going to happen. So, I think, first of all, I'll step back and say, I think the infrastructure bill will pass. I'm not sure if the bipartisan bill is going to pass, but something is going to pass. Something massive is going to pass. To me, there's almost no doubt about that. You don't get to this point of pushing a bill this large toward the finish line, and then you end up killing it, because it would be an embarrassment to Biden and the Democrats. At the end of the day, Democrats can't let that happen, and they know that. If Republicans block the bipartisan bill, it'll be done through reconciliation. Even if it goes through on a bipartisan bill, I think you'll still see a massive reconciliation bill. To me, I would say 90%, but 95% you're seeing pass. On voting rights, it doesn't look as good. But at the same time, again, as I said a second ago, Joe Manchin, I can't believe he's this stupid. So I can't believe that he's this naive. So I guess I kind of wonder where this goes maybe in the fall. If this bill gets debated on the floor, if, Manchin came up with a compromise piece of legislation that Republicans blocked. I don't know if they'll be able to bring it to a debate on the floor. If they can, I do kind of wonder if Manchin, this is all just a setup in order for him to say at some point in the fall, look, I've tried to work with Republicans. I've tried to come to some, and now I'm going to back away from this. And now I'm going to and now I'm going to support this. And I'll just say one thing about this. Look, Manchin's position, I understand, I guess, in the sense that he's from West Virginia. He wants to look like a moderate Democrat, even though, let's be honest, he probably wouldn't get reelected if he runs again in 2024. He barely won it. He won it by 5 points in 2018. It's an even redder state now. I don't see it happening. Sinema is up in 2024. She clearly is going to run for reelection. She's got a bright political future ahead of her. Not passing a voting rights bill actually hurts not just the Democratic Party, it hurts her specifically, because literally she is in a state that is controlled by Republicans in the state legislature who are passing voting restrictions legislation. So actually, this is good for her politically. Now, I think she has concluded that she needs to appear more moderate in order to win in Arizona. I think I hate to tell anybody who's a politician how to do their job. They know about politics state better than I do. But it does seem like a bad political strategy in her part.
Well, I realized to appear more moderate, and I realize that politics are perception, but for God's sake, I mean, it's voting rights. It's to protect people's rights against these laws that they're passing for no reason, to solve a problem that doesn't exist. It's like, it's not moderate. It's just, I understand it looks that way, but this is access to voting. It's to make voting easy.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I also I'd like to meet the voter who says, I was going to vote for Kyrsten Sinema, and then she suspended the filibuster so Democrats could pass a voting rights bill, and now I'm voting for Republican. I mean, that voter might exist, but I am skeptical that voter actually exists. I mean, I just don't know who is going to be swayed by her suspending the filibuster in order to pass voting rights legislation. I can't imagine the person exists. And frankly, if she spends 7 or 8 months hemming and hawing and saying she wants to keep the filibuster, wants to work Republicans, and finally says, all right, I tried, but it's not good enough, is she really going to lose any support for that? I find that hard to believe. I think she's going to build support among Democrats who will see her as somebody who did the right thing, even if she was a pain in the ass for 9 months before that.
Awesome points, all of them. Truth and Consequences. Go subscribe right now if you haven't already, and follow Michael. All the information from Michael Cohen in the show notes. I always appreciate it. Thank you very much for talking to me today.
It's always a pleasure, Pete. Thank you for having me.
All right, there you go. Michael Cohen at SpeechBoy71. Go subscribe to his newsletter, truthandcons.substack.com. Special discount for stand-up members. Visit today's sponsor, veryheal.com/Pete. If you haven't checked that out, go get your medical marijuana prescription right now. And that's all I've got. Got to get this posted up. Sorry if it was late for those of you that listen early in the morning. I got back late Sunday night and had to get up early to get it done, but I got up 3:45 and hopefully got it up by 8 a.m. and when all is said and done. I love you. I appreciate you. I thank you. You're not alone. John Carroll is always with us. He sings us out every day and in as well. You got to stand up, everybody. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. While you lying awake wondering where the money all went, it'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to play voice inside and listen well and it'll